We all have shadows, those hidden parts of ourselves we'd rather not face. But what if those very shadows were pointing us toward the light we most need? Hello, folks, and welcome back to Speaking from the Heart. And today, we're going to talk about something we all experience, but don't always want to face: the shadows of life. We'll unpack what they are, what causes them, how light and shadow work together, and most importantly, how we can recognize and overcome them. So what are shadows? Well, Carl Jung once described the shadow as the hidden or unconscious side of our personality, the parts of ourselves we'd rather not admit. Sometimes they're traits we've suppressed, sometimes they're weaknesses we've denied, and sometimes they're just parts of us we're not proud of. They may not be malevolent on their own, but if we don't bring them into the light, they can control us in ways we don't see. Shadows can come from many sources, such as being glued to our phones, obsessing over approval from others, clinging to control, chasing after money or comfort, or even getting stuck in unhealthy thought patterns. And at its core, the question arises: are these ingrained bad habits that pull us away from living the life of the light within? There's also what the Christian tradition calls sin, or what might be called moral decay. It's not about shame or blaming others. It's about facing the truth. When we turn away from the ways of love, mercy, and honesty, we create distance from the light we have within ourselves. And in that space, shadows appear. It seems that shadows only exist when there is light. Now think about your own shadow. Even in the darkest night, you'll see it only if you're standing under a street lamp. The brighter the light, the sharper and more defined the shadow becomes. And during softer evening light, your shadow is still present, but it appears lighter. That's how it works in our spiritual life too. The more we draw near to the light, to the presence of God that dwells within us, the more clearly we can see the shadows in our hearts. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, but it also is where the healing begins. Now, mystics have talked about something called the dark night of the soul. It's not the same as depression, which is a medical and emotional condition that needs professional care. The dark night of the soul is more about a deep, inner sense of emptiness, or feeling far from the light of God. But how do we see the shadows of the soul when we can't even see our own soul? And what does that mean anyway? Well, Saint Teresa of Avila in the Interior Castle gives us a beautiful clue. Quote, "It's very important, friends, not to think of the soul as dark. We are conditioned to perceive only external light. We forget that there is such a thing as inner light, illuminating our soul." End of quote. The inner light is the divine presence within us, and we can nurture it through prayer, meditation, and contemplation. The more time we spend in God's light, the more clearly we can see what doesn't belong there. But how do we begin to recognize our shadows? Well, it usually starts with a feeling. We might notice we're restless, unsettled, or just plain unhappy with ourselves. Maybe we're living in a way that clashes with our values, saying one thing but doing another. Or maybe we're locked in a constant battle with our ego, which hates to admit it's wrong and loves to stay in control. Now that wrestling match isn't easy, but it's one of the ways we begin to become aware of what's hiding in the shadows. So here's the big question. How do we overcome our shadows? Well, first, we have the example of Jesus. Now, this is a good place to start. Luke chapter 5 tells us, quote, "But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed," end of quote. Now, even Jesus took time to step away from the noise and spend quiet moments with his Father. Silence gives us space for truth to rise to the surface, for the shadows to be revealed. We need to ensure that they're in his light and not our light. Secondly, compassion is another step along the way of overcoming our shadows. And it's not about being kind to others. It's also about being kind to ourselves. And Jesus told us to love your neighbor as yourself. If we're harsh, critical, and unforgiving towards ourselves, it's almost impossible to extend genuine love to others. Thirdly, there's forgiveness. Now, for instance, in the Catholic tradition, confession becomes a powerful way to name and release the weight of sin or the shadows that we have. Unfortunately for some, the confessional box becomes a box for untold guilt rather than healing of the heart, or a return to a wholeness of self within the context of reconnecting with the divine light. So forgiveness can't just stay in the confessional. It has to flow into our relationships, repairing what's broken, letting go of grudges, and where possible, making things right within ourselves, within others, and with the living light that shines within. And fourthly, we need people. We're not meant to face our shadows alone. That shadow being a faith community, a small circle of trusted friends, or even one close companion who knows our heart and won't judge us. When someone listens without condemnation, it becomes easier to bring what's hidden into the open. So here's the good news, folks. The shadows in your life don't mean the light is gone. In fact, their very presence is proof that light is shining somewhere. And our job is to turn toward that light, to let the divine presence, that spiritual light, reveal what needs to change and to take the steps, however small, to walk in greater freedom. So here's our challenge this week. Let's set aside some time to reflect and ask God to show us any shadows we've been avoiding. And when he does, let's not run from them. We need to bring them into his light and ask him for the courage to take even one step toward healing, whether that's forgiving someone, seeking help, or simply sitting with the truth of what you and I see. Next time, in our episode, Speaking from the Heart, our topic is Love is Hard Work in Today's Conflicted World. And we'll discuss a world filled with division, misunderstanding, and constant noise, where love can feel harder than ever to live out. I'm Richard Fontenay, signing off. let's meet again next Monday, if not before. Bye now.